And here is the castle. I was going to go to the grocery store, but I couldn't resist going far. I suspect this is the crew that adds the schmaltz, the ambiance, to the castle for the tourists. And you can mix with them, I think, perhaps, perchance. Candle making device, replica of sorts. I attempt to walk around the castle without going in to the castle where I would have to pay. View of the castle as I work around. They're pretty defensive hills to climb up. Vertical rock mixed in with trees and stuff to get down to the lake. But here we'll get a spectacular view of the lake. And my first view of the lake. And there, the beautiful little castle, or church rather, on the island. I think that's the Alps back there. As I can climb, and it's interesting how many castles I've been at where there was a secret door that was either secret or extremely well protected, and this would be a good example. Idea of what a formidable slope this was. I'm going to assume that that's the trail down. Went up to my right, and so I'm back at this intersection. I think I'll pursue this and just see if it goes out to a bluff or if it continues down. If it doesn't go down, then I must go back, I assume, to the parking lot, main parking lot, and from there try to find. I scared up this little guy, and I think is a relatively young bird, because he didn't fly very secure. Path on that knoll that we saw in front of us, saw these beautiful flowers. Other perspective, looking a little bit back farther to the left than we could see before, and it's back there that the town is and my hostel. Ours are also enjoying the view. I'm not sure it's the same as the others that I've seen. Pretty blue flowers, maybe 3/8 of an inch at the widest. Down towards the lake, and I'm following that, but I saw this interesting exposure of the rocks, and I thought I'd take a look at it. It looks like a crumbly kind of, maybe a sandstone or something. Very, very prone to cracking, it looks like. My trail. Careful on this trail because there's a lot of roots, and roots when they're wet are really dangerous. The trail appears to go forward to that bench, but I'll explore to see if it goes a little farther. It goes to the right, suggesting this is a major trail intersection, and it goes to the left, which I'll ultimately find. The trail is simply switch back down to the lake, and then it'll wrap around my right to go around the entire lake. And there's been work here to clean up the trail a bit. Station a bit, those devices protecting against whatever animal it is that would chew up a marker. I guess as you would expect for trees on such steep slopes, they have a rather shallow root system, but probably one that spreads out quite a bit until it just can't take the wildflowers. You can see how these beautiful trees have to support themselves. They go down with their roots as far as they can, but then they spread out to the sides and up the hill. Fairly substantial roots. Roots that go straight down along the side and try to bolster it up by probably some kind of pressure. Looking at some of the rock that supports this castle. More of a view of the town's end of the lake. appropriate town noises for a Saturday. So here's the real trail down from the top of the castle. And if I walk to the left, I go right back to town. There you see a bunch of restaurants, and here it looks like floating docks over there, like they can be positioned elsewhere on the lake. I don't know if they do or not. And if I go back this way, I can go around the lake. So it's kind of an iffy day, and I think I'll just go around. Very pretty developed area. This is a primo area. Is of a woman who looks like she's in a position of getting ready to dive into the water, and a goat behind her, either pushing her into the water or won't go any farther than that. The person's estate needs to have their statues, although these are more discreet than the ostentation of sanctuary. We'll see if we can get closer. Is that two people? Man on their back, on his back. The ballet dancer's position. Or lodge. I don't know if it's an individual owner, but Villa suggests that it's will be a rental. Scoundrel planted an ice cream stand right along this walkway and forced me to buy this double scooper. There's a rowing center. Beautiful lake. Expensive homes. That one there on the left with a very interesting bottom to top central bit of wood detail. Our church on the island. Panning back to what I presume to be the Alps and the center of town. The tourist ambiance. from whence we've come. I wonder if they just ring the bells lightly all day long just for ambiance. I think this is how you get out to the church in the island. Walk way up this side because you're not on the road. Pretty structure, probably a very old mansion. Church is that one on the right, and the church on the island banging away. Must be something like 3 o'clock. The former mansion may still be. Looks like it's unused, kind of cold looking. Hall. Some pretty decoration up on top. We'll go to the other side. Dropped us off here at the last village. It turns around and goes back to Bled now. And this is the little tourist village here, very, very small. And I will go here to the right and up to a falls, which I will follow underneath that side of this large canyon. Now, whether this is a canyon or a cirque, I don't know. And then I may come back here and find another place to hike this way. There's a cable car that goes up also. Also a place where I'm told that everything is well marked. So I think slap probably means fall. Be in a country where most people speak English and walk across the bridge and hang a left. Up here with 4 teachers women from Malaysia. Principally teaching English, but also one of them science and one of them geography. But they were astounded at the lakes and rivers here because they're so clear. As you can see debris floating down underneath the water because their rivers are all as she said, a tea-colored, muddy brown. Then we hit a a trail, if I understood what was said to me. This is probably an older village that has some older components like this barn, but otherwise is basically homes and or pensions. There I think are some trail markers, and this is just a pretty little simple floral box. Setup was with the chips and so forth on the ground, but I kind of had an idea, and I think this is going to prove me correct. It's a practice rock for mountain climbing. But maybe interesting if I reproduce this. Nice gravel road now, and next to this very large, looks like a water source coming off the mountain, perhaps from the falls. Beautiful flower, not only from a distance, particularly up close because of its intricacy. And curiously, somewhat similar to this one that we've seen before. Pretty flower, maybe a ½ inch across, backdropped by those pretty flowers, and themselves less than that. And this wooded area, pretty open on the ground, and a good middle story and an upper story, but not completely closed of light. You can see the big rock sticking out. Some nice sized trees, but I suspect, as this stump and that stump would indicate, this has been forested over one or more times. Example of how trees begin the process of breaking down the land, ultimately erosion, by its roots literally splitting apart a big rock like that, and working on this nearby rock that presumably has a trail marker 4, but the road we were following earlier was number 3. All around me as I hike up the mountain is the sound of rushing water, and there it appears to be a river washout, very steep. I don't know if there's water in there, but you can see that it moves a lot of material, has for millenniums. And off to my right I can hear what I assume is the falls somewhere back behind those trees. By these pretty little flowers in all their variety of shapes and colors. Purple lady slippers. Just a couple of them that I've seen here. Maybe we'll see more. At first I thought these were a couple of flowers. Don't they look like clowns' hats? Good sized falls considering the amount of water that seems to be rushing down this stream or river off to my side as I hike up. I'm trying to figure out how to, I'll have to try to figure out how to get an actual focus here so I can get the flower sharp and the leaves on the top blurred a bit, and I don't know what I'll do with the moss on the tree. And Jasenko is responsible for the creation of the park. I think it's great that such people are memorialized, even here in English, which is an irony because not much English in the park. Looks like the river comes down, at least at this point, in 2 places, like that, making it very pretty view. cable car that the ladies went up. That's McAfee area. We would have hiked up the far side of the lake, and now we'll go up to the falls, which apparently is circled. Stream off the first bridge we crossed after paying the ticket before the hike up to the top. A lot of that we see all over, but they're normally a white color, whereas these have a tinge of lavender. Rocks with trees and grass and moss growing on just seemed like they were designed for some gargantuan garden. This is the park's campground, which surprised me that there were this many campers, if you will, in the sense of vehicles, and then it ranges off here to the right and down alongside the lake. And here begins the 4-kilometer walk back to the little town to the west of, or correction, to the east of the lake. It should give us some very lovely view. These pretty flowers and their clover-like leaves. Flower I don't think we've seen before, although we've seen clusters of white flowers. But these flowers look like individual ones, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Here another pretty cluster of flowers. These quite small also. I think maybe 1/2 inch max. Because they're on a stalk-like plant. Road from that hiking trail, which was probably an old road, and negotiated that kind of very steep embankment because the lake can rise right up to that lower point that you see right there, apparently, because there's brush all up through there. To get down here so I could have a view looking back where we were this morning. Somewhere up in there, probably off to the right actually. People over there cruising in a kayak. Yep. And for the falls, said that this is all karst geography, and I assume that if we look closely right there in the middle, and I'll get up a little closer, you'll see that layering effect you get from sedimentary rock deposited in the bottom of a huge inland lake or ocean. Those big cliffs, you can see that same kind of striation. You see it in the Tetons. That's why the shells are up on top of Moran, I think, and wildlife having their lunch. Never seen a critter like this eat. I discovered this trail. It's not very well used, which is nice because there's nobody here. And it's kind of pretty and intimate alongside the lake. No clear views, but pretty. This would be a lovely lake to kayak around. Kind of like Jenny Lake and Lee Lake. The owners are apparently permitted to leave the little small boats. They're a tourist boat, I'm guessing, including this very pretty little rowboat. Look at the lovely seat in the back. And it takes 2 pair of oars. Down there, maybe right there, is the village I returned to pick up the bus back to Bled. Unless I decide, I think, Miha at the hostel gave me directions to go that way, up to a small village on the road. Not too much fun. A little bit of detail up there in the middle. And more interest looking at it from the back. Pretty bench to sit on with great view. I can eat my apple. And up beyond that point, on the right, would be the location of the falls. Looks like men looking up into the mountains. And what a spectacular view it is. Cute little chair. Getting closer to our hikers, it looks like. They're a pretty bridge. Side road back to Bled. Like a pretty little rural route.
Yeah, yes. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so.
Yes.
The road wasn't this narrow like that.
Road. The viewpoint of the sheer wall that defends one part of the castle, or one side of it. My views as I leave Bled for a hike to Vintgar Gorge. This is an absolutely beautiful area, like Jack, because the mountains are far more in the distance, the spectacular mountains. I think they're called the Julian Alps. These are beautiful properties along here. Modest homes, but lovely properties. The green, of course, is what's so lovely because they get so much nice water. But they also have a good winter, apparently. The problem for an American walking along these roads, narrow as they are, this one happens to have a pedestrian pathway marked off and bike path marked off, but is that the roads are narrow, but these people are used to driving on narrow roads where they're driving tight to pedestrians, and the pedestrians are used to it. But I'm not, so to me it's always kind of scary if I don't feel more distance. It's the same by analogy in cultures. If a person stands too close to another person, if you're doing it to a relative, it's no big deal. If you're doing it to your wife, you can be as close as you want, but a stranger better be back a bit. This beautiful countryside or what? Look at the opportunities for hiking and biking. You can kayak here on the rivers and the lakes. How cumbersome it must be to walk with a pouch filled with fluid underneath your hips. I'm sure women are grateful that their breasts are now on their chest and that they walk upright. Another scientific moment from Scott. This Grovant-like visage is accessible for hikers, but sure is pretty. And a lovely day today. Well, those drying racks that are far more sophisticated, of course, made out of cement and probably milled poles. Another one up further. Whether they're used today or not in modern Slovakia, I don't know. This is it, and you can see what it's doing to the insects. During the little town of Podham, or Podham. Interesting plant I'm not sure I've seen before. Little farming hamlet of Podham. In fact, it so much reminded me of walking the Camino. I, for moments, looked down to see if there was a yellow arrow anywhere. And yet pretty homes and modern-ish equipment being used. Indicated only the most modern equipment being used. Sized animals here too. While Ljubljana and some of the larger towns may be secular, the rural towns not necessarily so. Roman Catholic. What a pretty place to live. Building that's gone to seed in what would appear to be an ideal place, or one place it would be nice to have a bed and breakfast. Maybe this is too old to res too effective if that's not a home. And that this may be a small power plant. I'm guessing it for two reasons. Number one, the electrical red sign there in the middle of that MHE, and then this water pouring out of a separate aqueduct from underneath that building. So an abandoned building. The gorge has been created. You get another example of what happens to trees on steep slopes in this kind of soil. And to protect against the onslaught of water pushed rock, I suspect. And in the drama of rushing water is always, to me, so exciting. I often think of Oli, who works at the Hansen Ranch as a top-level kayaker, if he would have the courage to do such a river. Well-constructed pathway. Always interesting to notice how the water has carved out other channels in the past. And probably at some point before it carved that slot, it had banged into that wall over there hard enough to carve out that little 1,000 years ago, maybe 50,000 years ago. The cavemen used to call this Thor's cauldron because the water would rush off there and carve out that bowl. These things. How this walkway is juts out cantilevered from the wall. You have to wonder, what would a river feel like if it had emotions? calm before it rushes over a falls, chaos as it hits the bottom of the falls, and then it sorts itself out and continues on for the next. Like air, we take water so much for granted. And that sedimentary layering, tipped on angle of course. A bit of Zion Narrows hike, except more dramatic, more intimate, closer in. Out, or whether they build up enough pressure, block the dam, and then get blasted out. Interesting flower growing right at the edge. I'm not sure I've seen this before. I wonder what kind it is. Is it a trout? There are a couple. They seem to hang out over the dark area. You can see them there. 3 or 4 now. 5, 6. More there. That's quite a few. There's a story there. Calm, then the rush through the falls into the cauldron, and then it comes out calm again, and then lazy as it sets itself up for the next rush. Do it. The wood is piled here for, other than they had to get it out of the way for some reason, and it was easier to put it here than carry it out. You can see where earlier support structures were down below that one. Flowers similar to this, a 4-petaled one, but I'm not sure we've seen a 5-petaled one. Fall over and careen down this canyon wall, getting lodged there. Will it eventually, the water just chew up the end till it brings it down all the way? I'd love to see it when it backs up. Compression of the water and power to create a mist right here. The dam is forming. Someday this is going to get exciting. I would suspect at that time they'll come in, block off the canyon and blow it up with one of the fellows that works here, what does happen? He says, no, it's in the winter time, the snow. So apparently the snow and the ice and so forth, they have such power in the form of hard water that when they come flying down here, they blast it apart. When the ice breaks on the lakes in the Ukanc River, it'd be a lot of fun to watch. Half of what happens when it blows it apart and some is left. Noise and excitement of this stuff being mashed around and the ice and the snow mashing it around. I'll bet you it's damn. Notice how welcoming that sunlight is, even though it's an enjoyable walk through the canyon. Itself will create some kind of a dam, already has. I wonder if that's pollution down there, or whether it's just a product of chemical in the water naturally. And here, quite an interesting little niche for having a picnic, if you knew it was here. See this man? That's 102 years. Good for him. Where the end of this log's had its knocked way, it used to extend in that direction. Just sit there and gobble it all up as it comes flying down. Perhaps we are now out of the dramatic tight gorge. Merely have a beautiful stream perhaps to walk alongside for a while. Once upon a time, the river was way up there. Plant I'm almost positive I haven't seen in that novel. On a long stalk. Sounds almost deafening for some reason. Maybe it's these overhanging rocks. This is interesting. It looks like this 2x14 got lodged into this crevice. This hardware that it takes to hold this elaborate fence mechanism against the rocks that may come down here and crush us. Plant probably not more than 1/4 inch in diameter. Interesting plant. Almost looks like they're berries from this distance, but they're not. Out of this particular plant. We'll go in close and look at it. Closer. Not seen here, and it may be present, I just can't see it, but are the communities of plants and so forth alongside the walls. Now you see some plants that look like they're growing out of crevices, but I'm not sure that that's because water percolates through the layers or just runs off the side occasionally, as opposed to Zion, where you have, I forget what the term is, but you have plant communities literally growing where the water continuously seeps out of and down from. Again, this slope creating its own potential dam. Man, I'd love to see one of these puppies when they get blasted out. It does quite a bit of quote-unquote damage or cleaning out of the channels further down, pretty much like logging used to do in America in the West. When you ran a bridge, I almost missed it. It's so innocuous up there. We're approaching a man-made dam. It also occurred to me that people enjoy going to art galleries, because I just had this sensation that I didn't care how long this walk went, because it's such an enjoyable walk to me. Perhaps people in art galleries feel plants before, but they're sure pretty. Each other, we have two of the same kind of plants. This with a tinge of lavender, completely white with just some green on the inner portion. I know there's hydroelectric power on this river, so perhaps this is part of the water control system, just exactly the mechanism works with the gearing. And here are a couple of rakes for cleaning. It's kind of pretty. The falls is kind of pretty, and of course the sound is always exciting. But imagine when those dams break loose and the water comes flying over this dam. What a hellhole of shattered wood this pool must be. As this hollowed out area, it's rounded enough to appear to be glacial, and it may be, but it may also just be a water runoff from the past. It seems so alive, so robust when it slams through a narrow spot like this. It's on the right. Pretty flowers that I think are roses. This is the opposite direction that I would go in, so I'm going to pan from there around just so we can see it. What pretty country to live in. And you recognize those, particularly the peak to the right. And I'm guessing as I pan around here that I'm supposed to be about right there, over there. And as you know, usually without any air at all, that's the direction of Bled. A convoluted direction in the sense that I got to go down and then go up. There was a road wrapping around to my right, dirt, that may go down into this valley. And then opposite from where we are, through the trees, was a clearing, and I saw people walking up a road there. And so then I backtracked and found this dirt road, which is probably a logging road, and in pure Scott Eaton I decided to come back and take this one, for which you can be guaranteed I will get lost. And what I think was a logging road, a little logging road, there's not big things like we have in Grovans, but it branches off here, so I'm going to follow a game trail downhill because I know there's a river, the one I was following through Vintgar, between me and where I'm trying to go. And then hopefully I can find that road going up over the top. I assume it's going over there somewhere where I could see this field and this horse and a couple of people walking up a road. I came out right over there after crossing a stream and bushwhacking down that hill and up this one. So now, keeping those mountains a little bit behind me and to the left, to take this hill that I saw two people going up what passes now that first ridge up to the top of it, and came to this big meadow, and I think I'm going to go to the left. I see a road, dirt road. The right, I'm sure, goes up somewhere, but I think generally I want to be going in about that direction, and I like this side. Fields are filled with subtle points of flowers, color, including this particularly pretty one on a stalk. My way out, this is probably a cabin where they store hay for winter feeding if they need to up here. I don't know how they do things. And here my road's starting to hook around in the direction I want to go. And I think I can see blue sky, which means I should be looking down over sides dirt road, and I'm assuming it's a logging road since I can hear some heavy equipment and see evidence of drag down the log on the cable, and he'll detach this one, probably either back up as far as he can, run another cable up, attach it, and drag that one down to that point. And probably either will do that with these, or has already done that with these from someplace, and now they just come in and cherry pick them out of here. There he's hauling a bunch of them away. A little tractor takes when it's hauling logs out from up above. It probably hauled those down and stuck them over to the side, kind of like this one right here. And now there, they've clear cut out a pretty good sized patch, but around the periphery of it, it looks like they've left some sparse trees. I'm not quite sure how that strategy. Got a feeling he's going to come right up through here and drag those logs right up here, and then stop and roll them off right against this pile right here. Boys and girls, this view of the Elephant's Head and of course the castle. So I'm a little bit off to what should be the southeast of where I was this morning. And the question is, do I bushwhack down through here or take the road? Church in the little town of Podum that I videoed this morning. So you can see we're not too far from it. So that was a nice hike. It's because it's a bunker. And it looks like it's pointed this way. Yep, there's the door. Through there we can see it. So it's pointed from the direction we just came, which would be, of course, to the north, which would be Poland or Germany or Austria. That's what I saw, but I didn't approach it from a direction that looks like it fits. Isn't this a pretty place? My elephant's head in the background through these, whatever these racks are, and up there the mountains, these pretty homes with flowers. Right, you'll have these views. Here just beneath the castle, which is right up above us there, is this pretty park with this little music gazebo. It's a very pretty place. It would be a good alternative to Jackson if I didn't already have Jackson to that park. A brisk walk around the right side of the lake. Apparently that's the shorter distance to get to my starting point for Iglicia Falls, which goes off there to the straight ahead of us, I think, somewhere. This equipment and time and just sitting there just to catch something with an IQ of 4, I think. You think they were in Afghanistan. Early morning perspective on this statue. Be able to distinguish this better in this light. Canyon. This looks like a person, maybe a woman. with their hips elevated, knees bent. The head must be up here somewhere. Can't tell if that's just skinny legs of a young person or scrawny of a person bereft of food and nourishment. Here in the morning light we get a better look at that, and we'll go in closer to look at it. Nice touch. On these boats that you see, rowboats really. I believe Miha's instructions were go to the area for camping. The campground's right over there, and then you take this road just before you get to the camping, and it takes you up to the number of Class B RVs I see. I don't know why I'm surprised, but I am. Any of the giant bus-like American extravaganzas of conspicuous consumption and self-pandering tow behinds, probably 30 feet, I guess. Typical Slovenia, everything's done with real class and style and finish. Some guys even got a satellite TV over there. Very American, can't live without its size. Interesting plant I don't think I've seen before. And its individual little 5-star flowers are probably about 1/16 of an inch in diameter, if that much. You're looking at this with a 200 digital telephone. We've seen before. And notice here we have a little bit of a mottling or of a muddying of the color. Green in the lower left-hand fronds and a little bit more white up here with some little bit curious colors, plus some bugs, I think. I think they're just sleeping. They look comfortable enough. Right, the Poljuka looks like it goes off to the right, and it's a lesser road, so I'm not going to take it. I think Bobella is where I need to go. I've seen this flower before, although it's certainly similar to what I've seen. This pan will really illustrate how vulnerable these trees are on these slopes. Not to mention the road itself. There it's obvious there's a whole another crop ready to go. Not to mention what lies already on these hillsides. It also makes me quite aware when I'm walking under the initials and the red posts and some of the markings on other pieces of wood, and this marking here represent the limits of individual loggers' tracks, at least right alongside this road. Perhaps their right to salvage. Up view of my landmark, at least, which I have named Elephant's Head. A pretty steep climb up that hill. Now, same decline. 2 runners passed me going up the hill. Tough young men. It's a plant that I think I've seen something similar, but I'm not sure I've seen a plant that is this small of stalk and that numerous of stalk. There's some classic daisies. Always makes for a pretty. We're just about ready to enter a little small town, railroad on our left. I may have gone through this town on the bus going to Bohinj Lake, because this is Bohinjska Bela town, shorted on that sign, I believe, as Bo, which comes from there, coming off that hill. Beyond that hill is the lake. You come down to this intersection, railroad going downhill, and then these signs. Bobella tells you go downhill underneath the railroad track. Keep going for 5 kilometers. And Bled Milano is also not what you're going to take. What you're going to do is go to the right here, according to a young girl I talked to. Now, what here would tell you that I have no put up until I find some other clue that gives me a pretty good indication I'm going towards the falls. And this little old road to the right is not. These are on a fairly substantial tree. Or bush at the on that road you're going to encounter your first sign for Iglicia, and it's right next to this storage rack. See how they're storing the grass and so forth there, the hay to dry out. I think that's what this must be for, and of course wood. So I guess we just follow this road. Now the question is, do I follow it through here or straight along through here? Ah, there's a sign there. Good, Iglicia. So right straight through this 2-track through the grass. A little patch of these flowers. And then you can see that as if you were to walk through in that direction, they all range down through what is an orchard. Now back at that sign, and just before it, I had chatted with a man briefly, and he had indicated that it was about 500 meters along this route that I'm taking now. From that above a very steep cliff face, and the stream running right up to 4. As you come out of that meadow we were walking through into the woods, first little clue will be this this piece of wood here. What its purpose was, I don't know. Maybe in the past there was a stream or something there. Anyway, to your left you will clearly see a small bridge put here so that you could enjoy a view, but the trees of course obstruct that right now. Of course we don't know what it means. This bridge, which was installed apparently in May 2011, it goes to another outlook. There's there, and a ladder there, which has probably got to be pretty damn slippery this morning, takes us down below. So that's what we have. You walk out onto that little spit, but you can see what a spectacular view it is, but a gnarly place to be. I'm guessing once we climb back down, the falls, the narrow falls coming out of the rock is right there. Here we are looking at the most narrow falls I've ever seen, with the most dangerous approach that I've ever been on. That's it, folks. But as we know from the declivity that we descended through, it's not the only place this falls has been. It just shows you the power of even a small stream of water. People arrive here and they unlock the gate and they drive up onto this little plateau, if you will. In there. Up there in the upper right is the bridge, and lower left is the hawk's nest in that cave hole. Part way down, you can see that not only through here and underneath the bridge and down through that narrow chasm that I'll show in a moment, but also right to my left here, the stream used to go. Whether it had more water then, or just for whatever the reason changed direction, who knows. But you can see we're still at quite an elevation. Idea of what this puppy's like. A little gnarly. I do a better job of scaring myself than I should. See, that's a bug right there. We can't get it to focus quite right, but you can see its legs, its wing. Directly above the falls may be some kind of personal water system. Don't know what the blue tank is for, but maybe they're various tanks for settling the water debris before it runs out through that little pipe. A little bit of a bowl that's been carved out here by the stream over the millenniums. There are several water systems, looks like, running down into this area. Blue flowers. Meadow, you'll be going to the left and exiting right down there at that pointy end of the meadow, and then slightly off to your left the trail will angle to the bridge. A lot of these, I wonder if they're edible. Section where you'll see the sign Iglicia pointing down here, you go straight ahead on what is ultimately a 2-track through that meadow, and the trail will go down, and then it'll angle around to the left, and it'll go down to the pointy end of the meadow, and when you enter the woods, you'll be on a little trail that'll arc a little bit to the left, and you'll see the narrow bridge that crosses the chasm. You will climb down a series of ladders on to get to a viewpoint from the bottom of the fall. From that signpost, I've climbed up another half a mile or so up the road or more. This looks like a reforestation of individual trees, but it's kind of been abandoned. What it does show is how the natural forces up here cause anything to start leaning downhill. Out for a weekend jaunt. You wonder if this has been a 1 or 2 month journey for them from down there. Hiking trail up into the woods for a ways. And I thought I'd end my hike at least to climb up right here and sit on this log and eat my apple. Minutes to a half an hour since I left these guys and went up and ate my apple. I've got a feeling the guy in the upper left, if we look at the earlier video, has been racing away. My guess is there's some kind of a tiff Romantic tiff, no doubt. Oh well, they'll sort.